اللهم صل.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله
صلى الله عليه وسلم.
صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. حي على السلام حي على السلام حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. اللهم أجلت اللبان وبستان واستغفار واجبان وجلني أقل من نبينا محمد مصطفى وقرار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء. تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووصم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم. كما قال عز شأن كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت. وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه مآسي العباد في الخلوات. سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه. يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء. تعذيبه المسيئين أهل وعفوه تفضل. ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله مهديين. من ركب سفينته نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرقا. وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وعروة وثقى. فقد قال إمام حسن العسكري عليه الصلاة والسلام: علامات المؤمن 5: صلاة ال50 وزيارة ال40 والتخطم في اليمين وتعفير الجبين وبسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I advise myself and all of you to adopt the taqwa of Allah as is the best of provisions. Yesterday was the day of Arba'een or Jihlum of Sayyid al-Shuhada, the 40th day after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein along with his family members and companions. And that day is commemorated in a very grand style all across the world. This year, due to pandemic, of course, the limitation that was placed, and not many people were allowed to travel to the places of ziyarat. But still, we find that alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the efforts were made in other areas of the world. So if we couldn't go to Karbala, we marched in our own place. We marched in our own cities. And therefore, there were signs and there were news that came from Pakistan and all around the globe where this Mashi, which has taken place, and even locally that had taken place. It is amongst the signs of a mu'min, as explained by our 11th Imam in this hadith that I began my discussion for today. Imam ﷺ mentions that there are 5 signs of a mu'min. What are the 5 signs of a mu'min? The first sign that Imam ﷺ mentions of a mu'min, he talks about the salat, which is 51 rak'at on day and night. Now, of course, these signs are easy. Some of them are very easy to be achieved. Some may be very difficult for us. But nonetheless, you find that our 11th Imam has counted these 5 things to be amongst the mustahabbat, as the signs of a mu'min. That one of the signs of the mu'min is that he makes an effort to perform 51 rak'at in day and night. What are these 51 rak'at? We know that the 17 are the wajib, the remaining 34 are the mustahab, which includes 11 rak'at of namaz-e-shab, along with the nafilah of each salat that we have, the 5 daily prayers. So you have 2 for Fajr, before Fajr, you have 8 for Zohar, before Zohar, you have 8 for Asr, before Asr, you have 4 for Maghrib, after Maghrib, and you have 2 for Isha, sitting down after Isha. All of these, including the 11 rak'at of namaz-e-shab, make 34 plus 17, 51 rak'at. So Imam says one of the signs of a mu'min is that he prays 51 rak'at in day and night. Well, this may be difficult for many of us, and it might not be due to the tawfiq that we have not been bestowed with. Otherwise, there are individuals who perform these 51 rak'at. Second thing that Imam mentioned, which is related to our discussion today, is ziyaratul arba'in. That one of the signs of a mu'min is that mu'min performs the ziyarat of Imam Hussein والسلام, on the day of Arba'in. Now, this ziyarat is a custom which was established when Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari made his way to the plains of Karbala on the 40th day after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. And since that moment, this became a tradition which has been related in the riwayat of Masumeen, with all of the merits that it holds. The importance of this mashi, the importance of this walk, and the importance of doing the ziyarat, which is proven through the words of 11th Imam. So 20th of Safar is Arba'in of Imam, when the caravan of the captives traveled from Sham to Medina, the day when Jabir also reached from Medina to Karbala to perform the ziyarat of Imam. He was the first Zair of Sayyid al-Shuhada. What to know? That there will be millions and millions of Zaireen of Imam Hussein after that first Zair of Imam Hussein. Sheikh Tusi, after quoting the ziyarat of Arba'in, which I'm sure you recited yesterday, we had the ziyarat Amal in the morning yesterday, that when Sheikh Tusi is narrating this ziyarat, he recites and he mentions in the beginning of the ziyarat the following: Assalamu ala waliyillahi wa habibih. Peace and greetings be upon the one who's the wali of Allah, the one who's the habib and the mahbub and the beloved of Allah. Assalamu ala khalilillahi wa najibih. Assalamu ala safiyillahi wa safiyyih. He says, we don't know exactly when this practice began, but Shias used to recite the ziyarat on this day, and others tried to go for the ziyarat of Imam, the following what Jabir had done. Now, a lot of time we would say, and the similar thing was asked from Imam Ma'soom, that, oh Imam, not every one of us has the ability to perform the ziyarat in person, that is, because ziyarat of Imam Hussein means that you be there personally, and I'm sure many of you have been to Karbala and you have done this ziyarat, physically. But not many of us have this opportunity, either we can't travel for physical, our health reasons or financial reasons, we cannot travel to the country. So what is it that we can do so that we are also part of it? Imam mentioned that whoever recites these words, and then Imam taught the ziyarat to his companion, whoever recites these words on the day of Arba'een, standing on top of their roof or in an open ground, from far away when you recite the ziyarat with the marifat of your Imam, it is as if you have performed the ziyarat of Sayyid al-Shuhada while you were inside his haram. Look at the thawab that is related to that without going, of course, going there, being there physically has its own merit and value, that how it gives you that, ambience of being in the presence of Imam Hussein. Far away, as it is mentioned to be one of the mustahabbat, you get the same reward from it. Here we'll focus on the importance of 40 or jahlum or arba'in. You realize that there isn't any jahlum for anyone else. Anyone else, meaning you don't commemorate the jahlum of Rasulullah. You don't commemorate the jahlum of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You don't commemorate the jahlum of Janab al-Sayyidah. You don't have the jahlum of any other imam for that matter. But you have jahlum of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So this is also specific and related to Imam Hussein al-Salam and his azamat. So what is the importance of this 40? First thing which attracts is the word arba'in in Islamic text. So for one reason we see that this arba'in is not for any other imam, but the word 40 is of high importance. It's been used in the text in Quran and riwayat, which highlights the importance of this 40, and we will highlight some of them. Many times these numbers which have been seen in Islamic text are referring towards something in excess. For example, if a person recites Dua Ahad 40 days consecutively after Salatul Fajr, riwayat mentioned that this person will be amongst the companions of Imam Zamana when he reappears. Even if you pass away, if you die before the reappearance of Imam Zamana, even then you will be raised back from your grave to be part of the companionship of Imam of the time. All you have to do is recite this Dua Ahad 40 days consecutively after Salatul Fajr. That's, for example, mentioned. Now 40 means what? What if you were to do 45 days, 41 days, or 39 days, for example? The fact that the word 40 is mentioned does not mean specifically 40. It means when you do an action for 40 days, it is more than likely that you will continue on doing this to be a practice for entire life. You won't stop after 40. You'll continue on doing it. So it reflects on excess. Remember the story of Gawhar Shad, who's buried, whose Masjid-e-Gawhar Shad is right next to the haram of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada ﷺ, 8th Imam in Mashhad. She's the one who constructed that masjid next to the haram of Imam Rada ﷺ. And she's forever remembered for having built that masjid, which is next to the haram of Imam Rada. While people go for the ziyarat of Imam Rada, they go through and they perform 2 rakat namaz in Masjid-e-Gawhar Shad. She was a lady, a very influential lady in our time. And there's a story that is associated with her, that when she started constructing this masjid, she got all the labor and she said, spend as much as you want to make this grand mosque. And when that grand mosque was being built, one day she visited to see what's going on. As you see the building which is being built behind this masjid as our Sadiq school. So sometimes, you go and you visit and you see what is the progress, how far they have gotten, and how long will it take. So she was visiting one day. And when she was visiting, one of the workers who saw her, and as they say, love at first sight, he fell in love. He said, this lady, not realizing that she's the one who's the owner of all of this. She's the one who's the boss, basically. She's the boss. And then he looked at her and then love at first sight. And then he fell sick. He couldn't even come back to work again. Poor guy, his mother, she said, as being a mother, that I'll do anything for the sake of my son, whatever it is. Every doctor came, they could not figure out what was wrong with him. And then eventually the mother spoke to the son. What is it that's keeping you sick like this? He mentioned this story. She said, I will go to Gawhar Shah and I will ask personally for her hand in marriage to you, even if it takes me, if they kill me or do whatever to me. I can't bear to see you in this sort of situation. So she takes the initiative, she makes her way, she asks to be seen and meet with Gawhar Shah. Eventually she was given the time, she goes up with all the jasarat. She goes up to her and she says, my son wants to marry you and he has fallen sick after seeing you. And this is a request of a mother that you oblige. What does your son do? He's one of the workers at the mosque who's building. What does Gawhar Shah do? She is the owner of all of this. There's a huge difference in these statuses. But Gawhar Shah was not an ordinary person. She said, okay. To the surprise of the mother, she said, sure, I agree to the terms. I agree to this marriage, but I have some terms. One is that I'm married already. So I will, seek divorce from my husband so that I can marry your son. I'll do that on my part. But your son has to do one thing for me. He has to do ibadat in this masjid for 40 days. Now I'm trying to bring it back to the 40s, so remember that concept. He has to do ibadat in this masjid for 40 days. Mother says, absolutely, done deal. She comes back home running, tells the son that Gawhar Shah has agreed to marry you, but with the condition that you worship 40 days like an etikaf, right? We sit in etikaf for 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. In other words, you were doing etikaf for 40 days in masjid. The son, he said, 40 days, I'll do it for 40 years if I get this thing done. And so he agrees. Right away, he's back to normal. And then he starts. When should I start? He said, well, start right away. The Gawhar Shah seeks the divorce takes place, the iddat period ends, or yes, it had ended so that she would be able to marry him. And then this person starts his part of the condition. He sits in the masjid. He goes through the process of sitting in the masjid. Every single day passes by. As the time is getting close to 40, Gawhar Shah sends one of her workers to go tell that man that the time is coming near. There are some preparations that we have to make. When they come to see him, he says, yes, go ahead and do whatever preparations that you have to make, once I will be done from this. And then after, when the time was very limited, it was maybe a week left, they came and again, they said, we're getting ready for all of this. He again obliged. And then when they came on the 40th day, they said, all the preparations are done, Gawhar Shah is ready, and you can come out of this 40-day retreat, and you can, marry Gawhar Shah. He said, marry who? He said, Gawhar Shah. He said, who's Gawhar Shah? He said, the person for whom you sat in masjid for 40 days. The one whom you fell in love with. He said, I only love one, and that is Allah. There's only love of God in my heart. There isn't any other love in my heart. He said, you did this 40-day retreat as a condition so that you can marry Gawhar Shah. You forgot all that? He said, Wallahi, I have no idea. There was this effect of worshipping in the masjid for 40 days. Maybe Gawhar Shah knew about this ahead of time, so she agreed to all of these conditions, but God knows. That man worshipped for 40 days, he did not even want to leave the masjid or worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the effect that you have for 40. That this number is mentioned as excess. That's something which is done excessively. So that's why you find in Quran where it says in Surah Tawbah that, O Prophet, استغفر لهم أو لا تستغفر لهم وتستغفر لهم 70 مرة. O Prophet, if you were to ask for their forgiveness or not ask for their forgiveness, if you were to ask for 70 times for the forgiveness of these people, لن يغفر الله. Allah will not forgive them because of the crime that have committed. One, we're asking for forgiveness. Second, through the Holy Prophet. Third, Prophet, if he was to make this dua 70 times, Quran says Allah will not accept. This is not a riwayat. Surah Tawbah, ayat 79 and 80. If you were to ask 70 times, we will not accept your dua. Prophet's dua, not accepted 70 times? Does that mean if Prophet was to make it 71 times? Or 100 times? Or 65 times? No. 70 refers to excess in number. That if Prophet was to ask excessively about these people, the crime that they have committed, Allah will not forgive them. Now go read the crime that those people had committed that is being mentioned in Surah Tawbah, ayat number 79 and ayat number 80. So therefore we understand that the number 40 in text is usually referring to something in excess. Arba'in Husayni, although, is commemorated after the 40th day of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. Let's look at the number 40. Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was given a risalat at what age? When he was 40 years old. Does that mean the one who was given risalat when they were in the arms of their mother, Hazrat Isa, or Hazrat Yahya, who was a young child, were they superior to the Holy Prophet? No. Prophet is Khatamul Anbiya. He is the seal of all the prophets. He's superior and afdal than all of the Anbiya combined. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is His Mashiach. If He wants, He gives the risalah to someone while they're still babies in the arms of their mother. As Hazrat Isa said, Inni Abdullah atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. Or when they are merely 7 or 8 years old, like Hazrat Yahya was, Ya Yahya khudil kitaba bi quwwatin wa ataynahu al-hukma sabiyya, sabi, that when he was a very young child. But for some, if he wants, he delays it for 40 years like Rasulullah, because there's something that Allah wants him to accomplish before he announces his risalah. That does not mean the Prophet was not Nabi all these years. Like Hazrat Isa is Nabi from the time he's born. He's announcing being the infant in the arms of his mother. You think Rasulullah is not Nabi from the time that he's born? No, he's Nabi prior to the birth of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam. The zuhur and the wujud khariji, the manifestation in the physical form, comes when he was born to Amina and Abdullah alayhi salam. And then when he reached the age 40, that's when he received the hukum to announce his risalat. Traditions say that age 40 in people is reaching the peak of their intellect. You know, there's the rushd, there's bulu when you're 15 years old for boys and 9 or 10-year-olds for the girls. But the bulugh fikri, intellectual bulugh, is when you reach the age of 40. Ibn Abbas narrates from Prophet that if someone is 40 and his good deeds haven't taken over his bad deeds, then he should pray to Allah for the good outcome. Then there's no hope for that person. If the good is not outweighing the bad when a person has reached the age of 40, then may Allah be with him. Miqat of Hazrat Musa was 40 days. وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً. So Hazrat Musa alayhi, when he went on the retreat, initially it was 30 days. Allah added 10 more days. It became 40 days. So you understand that there is some significance of 40, that even when Allah calls one of his prophets for the miqat, it lasts for 40 days. Hazrat Ismail, Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi, that dua that we recite in the Qunut, Rabbi awzi'ni an ashkura ni'mataka allati anamta alayya wa ala walidayya. That dua was recited when? Hatta idha balagha ashuddahu wa balagha 40 sana. When he was 40 years old, he was at that kamal of the intellect. Of course, he was Nabi, so his intellect was always at the highest, at the peak. But when he was 40 years old, he goes ahead and makes this dua for his parents. Hazrat Adam alayhi prostrated for 40 days and 40 nights on the mountain of Safa, so that he can ask for the repentance of what he had did when he was in the paradise. But Israel cried and begged for 40 days and 40 nights for the acceptance of their dua. Hadith says that if a person is sincere to Allah for 40 days, Allah makes him ascetic in this world, zahid in this world, and teaches him the ways of life, and wisdom is given to him. So just 40, just look at the importance, that how much that has been mentioned. For example, many books of hadith are titled Arba'una Hadithan, Jahil Hadith, 40 Hadithen. Many of the scholars have written these books, 40 Hadithen, Arba'una Hadithan, the tashri' of the 40 hadiths. You know the reason behind it is because the Prophet said, if a person from my ummah memorizes 40 ahadiths and acts according to them in his religious life, Allah will raise him on the day of judgment as faqih and as alim. You don't have to go to Qom or Najaf or Iraq or Syria or anywhere to study al-Madin or any seminary to be called faqih and alim in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet said, if you can memorize 40 ahadith and act upon those 40 ahadith from Ma'soom alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah will raise you as faqih and will raise you as alim. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, if 40 people did bay'at, if 40 people came to my bay'at, I will stand up against the enemy that is threatening us. You know, there are a lot of people that were coming to Imam saying, Imam, why don't you take your right? This is your right, the hukumat, and someone else has usurped it. Why don't you stand up? Imam said, if I only had 40 people. Imam, we are ready to sacrifice ourselves for you. Imam said, okay, if you're ready, then come tomorrow. But all of you shave your heads before you come. They went back home, only 4 people showed up the next day. Imam said, if you can't even give hair for my sake, how are you going to give your necks for my sake? So this was just a test by Imam. Now look at the state in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that he does not even have 40 people to stand by him who are, trustworthy, that Imam can trust absolutely. Therefore, this 40 is also uttered by Imam alayhi salatu wassalam. And then it says from Imam that إِذَا حَضَرَ الْمَيِّتِ 40 رَجُلًا فقالوا اللهم إنا لا نعلم منه إلا خيرا فإن الله عز وجل قد قبلت شهادتكم وغفرت له وعلمت مما تعلمون. That if there are 40 people that stand or they come to the mayyat of an individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قَدْ قَبِلْتُ شَهَادَتُكُمْ, I have accepted your shahadat. وَغَفَرْتُ لَهُ, and I have forgiven this person. وَعَلِمْتُ مِمَّا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and I know that which you do not know about this person. So I have forgiven this person. That's why we always say, when there's a mayyat, let people come for this mayyat. At least 40 people, when they show up for your janazah, and they all utter, when they recite this janazah, salatul janazah, which is a dua. That's why you have seen those who have attended. What do? I make everyone recite it. A lot of times people don't know the salatul janazah because it's not memorized. So we repeat it. We recite slowly so that everyone repeats it. Why? Riwayah says if 40 people stood behind a janazah and they said, Oh Allah, inna la na'lamu minhu illa khayra, I do not know anything except good from this person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ غَفَرْتُ لَهُ, I have indeed forgiven this person. I take your testimony about him, and I know more about his sins than you do. I know because everything is aware, everything is open in front of me, things that were hidden from you. Even I'm aware of those things. But with all of that, the fact that you are standing up and bearing witness, 40 people did that, I will also forgive this person. Hadith, there are many hadiths in this reference, but you got the point that 40 is something which is significant in our traditions, and 40 has been mentioned on numerous occasions. Just a couple more exhortations in reference to 40 which can be applied to us, and inshallah I'll bring it towards the close. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So ziyarat of Imam Hussein from our 6th Imam has few points in it. First, Imam says salam on Imam Hussein with his attributes. He says, Assalamu ala waliyillahi wa habibih. So this is the salam to Imam Hussein with his attributes that he is and his status to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then our 6th Imam bears witness to the high status of Imam Hussein. And then Imam talks about the goals behind the qiyam of Imam Hussein. And then a description of the pillars of Imam Hussein and the lessons to be learned from the shahadat of Imam Hussein. And then the renewal of our bayat and our allegiance to Imam alayhi salatu wassalam. And lastly, Shia's belief that are mentioned in this ziyarat and salawat on Ahlul Bayt. You see, we recite these ziyarat and we're so accustomed to the traditions. That is the day of Arba'een, we have to recite the ziyarat. We have to perform 2 rakat namaz after this. But seldom do we pay attention to the matalib that are mentioned in this ziyarat. These are some of the 8 things that are mentioned in this ziyarat. I don't think we paid attention to that. We've been reciting the ziyarat for so long. Have we paid attention to what is being discussed in this ziyarat? It could be that we don't understand the language, but these ziyarat are now available in other languages. The translation is running underneath. Pay attention to these matalib, which are so high that Imam is saying, after mentioning the wasf and the attributes of Sayyid al-Shuhada, after which, mentioning his high status near Allah, he talks about the goals of the qiyam of Imam Hussain. Why was Imam Hussain standing up? Then he talks about the description of the killers that had gathered to kill Imam Hussain. Then there's a protest that is taking place, lessons to be learned from the shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, so that it's not gone in vain. Renewing our bayat and our allegiance to Imam, that why are we here today? And then our beliefs are also mentioned in this ziyarah. What is our belief in reference to the tabarra and the tawalla, which are part of our beliefs and our actions, for example. And lastly, the importance of this salawat. So I began with this hadith from our 11th Imam. There are 5 signs of a mu'min. Imam mentions a few things and we'll conclude with it. He said, Bismillah, part of every surah except Surah Tawbah. So we recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in the beginning of every surah except Surah Tawbah. So make sure. But what do you see in our Qurans? We see in our Qurans that we don't have one written after Bismillah. That is so that we don't break the unity with other Muslims. Because other Muslims who are in majority don't believe that Bismillah is part of each surah. So that we are in conformity, in unity with all of the Muslims of the world, and our Qurans are same. We went to the extent that we did not even put number 1 after Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in our own Qurans. Our own Quran means the Quran that are published in the Shia world. You will find they're completely similar. There is not a difference between the Quran that is published in the Shia world or the Quran that is published in the Sunni world. And we go to the extent by not even putting number 1 after Bismillah. So there is complete conformity between the 2 nuskhas. But we know that when it comes to the recitation of Surah Fatiha, Bismillah is part of it. When it comes to the recitation of Qul Huwallahu Ahad in our namaz, Bismillah is part of it. Recite Bismillah, otherwise your namaz will be invalid. Prostrating on the turba made of khak and clay. We sit on beautiful carpet, but we do sajda on khak, dust. Because we are made of clay, and it is absolute and complete humility to put your top part, the forehead, which is, significance is that it is your respect. You put it down on the ground in humility and in humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then if this khak is made from the khak of Karbala, then nurun ala nur. Why? Because this khak reminds you of that greatest tragedy and the shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And because this khak has the blood of Sayyid al-Shuhada and his companions in it, then it just raises the bar as far as this turbat is concerned. Number 3, Imam al-Islam mentioned the 51 rak'at, which I have already discussed. Number 4, Imam mentioned wearing a ring for mu'min. And lastly, Imam mentioned the ziyarat of Arba'een is following the sirat of Imam al-Sajjad and the protest against Banu Umayyah. Imam only counted mustahabbat, right? In this hadith of his, he only counted mustahabbat because prostrating on khak is not obligatory. You can prostrate on, on any other object which is allowed for you to do sajda. You can prostrate over a wood, over some leaves, which are not edible, over some other objects upon which sajda is allowed. So khak is not the only thing upon which you have to do sajda. You don't have the khak with you, you don't have turbat with you, you can take a piece of paper or tissue paper, you can do sajda on that, right? So it is not wajib to do it on the khak. It is mustahab, of course. Number two, it is not wajib for you to wear a ring. It's only mustahab. If you wear it, it's mustahab. Number three, it's not wajib to say Bismillah out loud. You can say it softly, right? And then number four, it's not wajib to pray 51 rakat. Only 17 are wajib. Rest are mustahab. And lastly, doing the ziyarat of Imam Hussein on the day of Arba'een is not wajib. It's only mustahab. So why is it that 11th Imam is counting 5 things to be the signs of mu'min and none of which is wajib? All of them are mustahab. Imam only counted mustahabat to be part of complete iman, didn't include any wajibat, which means wajibat are perfection of Islam and mustahabat are the perfection of your iman. When you do wajib, you perfect your Islam. When you do mustahab along with wajib, now you realize the reason behind mustahabat. Then you perfect your iman. A perfect and complete mu'min is not someone who cares for the wajibat only, but also performs the mustahabat as well. This makes a complete and a full package, as being mentioned by Imam ﷺ. It is a tragic day, a day in which Imam Hussein ﷺ, for his zawar, they come and they pay tribute. You know, the ziyarat that was performed by Jabir and the ziyarat that was performed by Ahl Haram. Jabir came, took his time, walked slowly, approached the grave, sat down on it, wept and cried. Before he came, he performed the ghusl in Furat, he put on new clothes, and then he approached the grave of Imam Hussein. But the different aspect of ziyarat is when you see Ahl Haram are coming from Sham. When they arrive, Jabir says, who's coming? He goes and he sees that there's a large gathering coming. And then he comes back and says to Jabir, Jabir, we cannot stay here anymore. Why? Because Ahl Haram are coming. The Ahl Bayt of Imam Hussein are coming. Imam will be expecting them. Oh, Jabir, let's get up and leave. Give them their space. Jabir and Atiyah leave that place. Ahl Haram come. When they arrive, look at the way they perform the ziyarat. All of the women, they threw themselves on the different graves. Janab Zainab throws herself onto the grave of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Janab Kulthum throws herself onto the grave of Hazrat Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Similarly, other women such as Rubab would throw herself onto the grave where her 6-month-old is laying on the chest of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Where Ali Akbar was laying, Layla would throw herself. And that's how they performed the ziyarat. And when they had done the ziyarat, it was time for them to leave. They said, everyone is ready. We can't see Rubab. Zainab comes to Rubab, who was sitting at the grave of Imam Hussein. Oh, Rubab, we have to leave. We're waiting for you. Rubab responded by saying, why should I go? My daughter is laying in the courts of in the zindan of Sham, and my son is laying on the chest of my husband, Abu Abdullah. ألا لا تنهى القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم سبحان من سبقت رحمته وتباه وسط اليدين بالرحمن سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا إلا دون وسعها وفعل السيئات ولم يجاز بها سبحان من لا يزداد على معاصي العباد إلا كرما وجودا وعلى كثرة الذنوب إلا عفوا وصفحا نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو ملك الذي لا ينازع في ملك نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو لا تغفر لعباده بجود ولا بعض المذنبين بعلم ونشهد أن محمدا حبيبه ونبيه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين. ألا قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا لصفيه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وإمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين وبذة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى الحسن المجتبى حسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ما ياث البدء والطغيان هادم أبيض الشرك والنفاق حاسد فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى عبائه الكرام متصلة الليالي والأيام. اللهم أجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا واكمل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمراء المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات. اللهم افعل ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآله الطاهرين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكر ان الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.